I suppose the story of a broken marriage never begins in the middle, but rather with the small things, those little fissures that grow into cracks, then canyons, then unbridgeable divides. My name is Alex Thompson. I'm 38, a software developer by trade, and up until recently, a believer in love, commitment, and the sanctity of marriage. I work long hours, immersed in code and algorithms, my mind often lost in logical puzzles. My wife, Emily, is 35, an editor for a local publishing house, an intelligent woman with a quick wit and a smile that could make you forget your worst day. We've been married for 10 years. Emily and I, we were that couple, always finishing each other's sentences, always seemingly on the same wavelength, or at least that's what I thought. We didn't have children. It wasn't for lack of trying, but sometimes life has a way of throwing you curveballs. Perhaps that was the first sign, a growing space between us that no amount of talking seemed to fill. She said it was work, the stress of deadlines, the constant stream of manuscripts she had to edit. But I started to feel there was something more lurking beneath the surface. Things started to shift about 6 months ago. At first, it was little things, like Emily staying late at work more often than usual. She'd always been dedicated to her job, but now there were meetings that stretched long into the night, book launches that required her presence every other weekend. She stopped talking about her day, stopped sharing the little anecdotes and frustrations that had always flowed so easily between us. I could feel her drifting away, and I didn't know how to stop it. We'd always been close, always been honest, or so I thought. But then she started receiving messages on her phone late at night. I'd hear the soft ping while lying next to her in bed, see the faint glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes as she typed back quickly, quietly. Whenever I asked who it was, she'd brush it off with a casual, "Just work," or "a friend." And then she started keeping her phone close, too close, like a secret she was afraid I might uncover. The first time I saw her smile at a message, a real smile that reached her eyes, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months, something deep in my gut twisted painfully. I tried to push the thought away, tried to convince myself it was all in my head, that I was being paranoid, insecure. But the gnawing feeling wouldn't leave. Then there were the clothes. Emily had always been stylish, had a knack for knowing exactly what worked for her, but now she seemed to be dressing up more, spending more time in front of the mirror, wearing perfume I didn't remember buying for her. She laughed it off when I mentioned it, said she was just trying to feel good about herself. But there was something in the way she said it, something in her eyes that told me there was more to the story. I found myself making excuses for her, convincing myself that maybe this was just a rough patch, that every marriage has them, that we'd find our way back to each other. But then, last week, I found a receipt for a hotel bar. 2 drinks, late at night, a hotel she had no reason to be at. I confronted her about it, and she said she'd met a friend, a colleague, that it was all perfectly innocent. She even managed to sound annoyed, like I was the one being unreasonable. But her eyes gave her away. That's when I knew. I knew something was very wrong. And so I started watching, quietly, carefully. I didn't want to be the jealous husband, didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I needed to know. I started checking her phone bills, looking for calls or messages that didn't add up, checking her social media for any clues, anything that would explain why she seemed so distant, so cold. I even followed her once or twice, hating myself for it, but desperate to find out the truth. And then, 2 days ago, I saw it. A name, Mark, appeared frequently in her call history, at odd hours, sometimes late at night, other times in the middle of the day. And when I searched for his name online, I found out he was a marketing executive, recently divorced, and coincidentally, the same guy she'd mentioned in passing a few months ago as someone she'd been meeting for work purposes. Now, I'm no fool. I've seen enough movies, heard enough stories to know what that means. But I needed proof, something concrete, something undeniable. And that's how I found myself, standing outside his house at midnight, my heart pounding in my chest, a plan forming in my mind. The following day felt like I was moving through thick fog, each step heavy with the weight of suspicion. I sat in my car, parked down the street from Mark's house, trying to make sense of everything. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to be wrong, to find out that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I'd seen the way Emily's eyes lit up when she talked about him that one time, the way her face softened. I'd been married to her long enough to know what that meant. I spent hours there, just watching his house, feeling the anger build inside me, pulsing like a living thing. I could see the lights flick on and off, catch the shadows moving behind the curtains. It felt like the whole world was in on a secret I wasn't meant to know, and that just made it worse. I went over and over what I was going to say, how I would confront him. I didn't want a scene, didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband screaming in the street. But I needed him to understand that this was going to end. Tonight, one way or another. Finally, the light in his living room went out, and I knew this was it. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the car, and walked up the driveway. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I had rehearsed this in my head 100 times, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I raised my foot and kicked the door with all my strength. It flew open with a loud crash, and I stepped inside, adrenaline coursing through my veins, anger boiling in my gut. The house was dark, but I could hear him moving around upstairs, could feel his presence. I didn't wait for him to come down. "I know that you are sleeping with my wife," I shouted, my voice echoing through the quiet house. There was a moment of silence, then hurried footsteps on the stairs, and he appeared, a tall, wiry man with a surprised look on his face, wearing nothing but a pair of jeans. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "This Saturday, you will invite her on a romantic date and record a video of your actions for me so that her face and the whole process can be clearly seen. I'm using this to destroy her in court during the divorce. But if you don't, next time I'll come back with 2 other men whose wives have also been in your bed, and you'll say goodbye to your instrument forever." He stared at me, shocked, his mouth hanging open like a fish gasping for air. I could see his mind racing, trying to figure out if I was bluffing or not. His face went pale, and he raised his hands defensively. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married, okay? I didn't know—" "Bullshit," I snapped. You knew. You knew exactly what you were doing. Don't try to lie to me now." His face twisted with fear, and I felt a grim satisfaction in my chest. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped, and he nodded slowly. All right, I'll do it. Just don't do anything crazy, okay?" I took a step closer, letting him see the rage in my eyes. "You better do it, or next time it won't just be me standing in this doorway." He swallowed hard and nodded again. I get it. I'll do it." I took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "Good. Now you've got until Saturday. Make it convincing." I turned and walked out, leaving him standing there in the shadows of his own living room, his face pale and his hands still shaking. As I stepped back into the cool night air, I felt something inside me harden. I wasn't proud of what I'd done, but I knew it was necessary. I wasn't going to be played for a fool. Not by her, not by him. As I drove away, I glanced at my phone, at the last message from Emily, saying she'd be home late again tonight. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. I was done waiting. This Saturday, everything would come to light. Saturday came quicker than I expected. Every day leading up to it felt like I was walking on a tightrope, nerves frayed, my mind filled with endless scenarios of how it could all go wrong. I hadn't confronted Emily yet. I wanted to, every time I saw her, every time she came home late or avoided my gaze. But I needed her to believe that I was still clueless. that I was just the loving, oblivious husband, because if she suspected anything, it would all fall apart. That morning, Emily was unusually cheerful. She hummed a tune as she made breakfast, her hair still wet from the shower, smelling of lavender and something else, something unfamiliar. I watched her from across the kitchen island, trying to read the lines of her face, searching for some sign of guilt, but all I saw was the woman I'd loved for so many years, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Got any plans today?" I asked casually, sipping my coffee. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat like a drum. She glanced at me with a smile, the kind of smile that used to make my heart skip a beat, but now felt like a dagger twisting in my gut. "Just a bit of shopping with Sarah," she said. "Maybe a late lunch, and then I might pop into the office for a bit. Deadlines, you know." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Sounds fun." "Yeah, just a little girl time," she replied, turning back to the stove, her voice light, carefree. "What about you?" "Oh, you know, the usual. Probably catch up on some work. Maybe go for a run later," I said, trying to keep my tone even. Inside, I was screaming. I wanted to grab her, to shake her, to demand to know the truth. But I held back. I had to. Just a little longer. We finished breakfast in strained silence, and then she kissed me on the cheek and left, her perfume lingering in the air long after the door had closed behind her. I sat there for a while, staring at the empty chair across from me, my mind racing. I didn't have to wait long. I knew where she was going, knew who she was going to be with, and soon enough, I would have the proof I needed. I waited until I was sure she was gone, then grabbed my phone and dialed Mark's number. He picked up on the first ring. "It's today," I said, my voice cold. "Remember what I told you. Don't mess this up." "I remember," he replied, his voice shaky. "I'll do it. I said I would." I hung up and drove to the place I'd chosen, a small coffee shop just across the street from the park where I knew they'd be meeting. I got there early, found a table near the window with a clear view of the entrance. I ordered a coffee I didn't intend to drink and waited. Minutes ticked by like hours. I checked my phone obsessively, watching the seconds crawl past. And then, just when I thought I might scream from the tension, I saw her. Emily, walking down the path, wearing that dress I'd always loved, the red one that clung to her curves just right. She was smiling, her face alight with excitement, looking younger, more vibrant than I'd seen her in months. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to see this through. I had to know. And then Mark appeared. He walked up to her, his face breaking into a grin as he approached. She laughed in that way that made her throw her head back, her whole body moving with it, a laugh I hadn't heard in months. I felt a sickening twist in my stomach. There was no mistaking it now, there was no denying it. This was no innocent lunch with a colleague, no work-related meeting. They kissed, a deep, passionate kiss that spoke of familiarity, of longing. I watched as his hand slid around her waist, pulling her close, and I saw her respond, pressing herself against him like she needed him, like she'd been waiting for this moment. My chest tightened, my breath coming in short, painful bursts. Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, holding it up as he whispered something in her ear. She laughed again, leaning in close, whispering back, her hand brushing over his cheek. And then, to my horror, I saw him hit the record button. He was doing exactly what I'd told him, capturing every detail, every stolen moment. I should have felt satisfaction, but all I felt was a wave of nausea, a cold, hard slap of reality hitting me across the face. This was real. This wasn't some nightmare I could wake up from. This was my wife, my Emily, lost to me. They moved to a bench in the park, sitting close, their heads bent together, talking in hushed tones. I watched, helpless, as the minutes dragged on, each one an eternity. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice me, didn't see the man whose life they were tearing apart, sitting just across the street, watching them with a heart that felt like it might shatter at any moment. I waited until they got up and started walking, until I saw them head toward the hotel just down the block. I knew what was coming next, knew what I was about to see, and part of me wanted to turn away, to get in my car and drive as far as I could, but I didn't. I needed this. I needed to see it with my own eyes, to feel the knife twist so deep that there would be no coming back from it. I watched them enter the hotel, watched them disappear behind those glass doors, and I knew. I knew everything had changed. I sat there in the car, staring at the hotel entrance long after they had gone inside, my mind a whirlpool of thoughts and emotions. Rage, betrayal, disbelief. They all swirled together, threatening to pull me under. I tried to steady my breathing, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I had seen enough. I had the proof I needed, but something inside me wouldn't let go. I wanted to burst in there, drag them both out, scream at them, make a scene that would echo through that hotel lobby for years. I wanted to shout, to hurt, to make them feel even a fraction of the pain that was tearing me apart. But I knew that would do nothing but give them a chance to twist the story, to paint me as the irrational, angry husband. No, I needed to play this smart. I needed to make them suffer slowly, the way they were making me suffer. I waited for what felt like hours, my eyes fixed on the hotel doors, half expecting Emily to come rushing out, guilt-stricken, realizing what a terrible mistake she had made. But that didn't happen. The minutes ticked by, my stomach churning, my pulse pounding in my ears, and still, there was no sign of them. Eventually, I forced myself to turn the key in the ignition and drive home. I didn't even know where I was going at first. I just needed to move, to do something, anything that wasn't sitting there waiting for my life to fall apart. But as I drove, I knew there was one place I needed to be. Our home, the place that suddenly felt like a stranger's house, where every object, every photograph on the wall felt like a betrayal. When I got home, I went straight to our bedroom. I opened her closet, rifling through her clothes, searching for something, anything, that would tell me why. Why she had done this. Why she had turned to him instead of me. The scent of her perfume hit me like a punch in the gut, that familiar blend of jasmine and citrus that I had once found intoxicating but now felt suffocating. I found the red dress she had worn, the one that had clung to her like a second skin. I pulled it out and threw it on the floor, staring at it as if it held all the answers, as if it could somehow explain how everything had gone so wrong. My eyes drifted to the drawer where she kept her jewelry. I opened it, and there, sitting on top, was a small velvet box I didn't recognize. I picked it up, feeling a chill run down my spine, and opened it. Inside was a silver bracelet with an inscription, "Forever, M." My hands started to shake. I could feel the rage boiling up inside me, a hot, blinding fury that made my vision blur. I knew who M was. I knew it without needing to ask. I slammed the box shut, my breath coming in short, harsh gasps. She had hidden this from me. This wasn't just some fling. This wasn't just sex. This was something deeper, something that had a hold on her in a way I never had. I felt like I was drowning, like I couldn't breathe. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I fumbled to grab it. A text from Emily. "Running late. Don't wait up for me. I love you." I stared at those words, feeling a sick twist in my stomach. I love you. The audacity, the nerve of her to send those words after what I had just seen, after what she was doing. I wanted to scream, to punch a hole in the wall, but I forced myself to stay calm, to think. I needed more. More proof, more ammunition for what I was planning. I needed to be sure there was no way she could weasel out of this. No way she could turn this on me. I needed to burn her world down just like she had burned mine. So I called a friend of mine, a tech guy, someone who owed me a favor. I asked him to help me get into her phone, her emails, her messages. He hesitated at first, sensing the edge in my voice, but he agreed eventually, said he'd send me everything he could find. While I waited, I paced the room, my mind racing. I couldn't sit still. Every second felt like an hour, every minute another stab in my chest. I kept picturing them together, hearing their laughter, seeing the way she leaned into him, the way she smiled. It drove me mad. Finally, my phone buzzed again. A message from my friend. Got it! Sending everything now. I opened the files, my heart pounding in my ears. I started with the texts, hundreds of them, stretching back months. I read each one, feeling the blood drain from my face. She talked to him about everything, her day, her dreams, her frustrations, things she hadn't shared with me in years. They exchanged jokes, pet names, confessions. There were messages filled with longing, messages where she told him how much she missed him, how she wished they could be together, how she couldn't wait until the next time they could make love. And there it was, the word, love. Not just sex, not just an affair. She told him she loved him, and he told her the same. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. It was real, all of it. And it wasn't going to end any time soon unless I made it end. I needed to get out, needed air. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, not sure where I was going, not sure what I was going to do, but knowing that I couldn't stay in this house, surrounded by all these reminders of a life that had been a lie. And as I stepped out into the cool night air, the last of the sun dipping below the horizon, I knew one thing for sure. This was far from over. The drive that night felt like it lasted forever. I had no destination in mind, just a need to get away, to clear my head, to figure out my next move. My thoughts were a chaotic mess, bouncing between rage and heartbreak, between the desire for revenge and the urge to understand how the woman I loved had become a stranger. I ended up at a bar on the edge of town, one of those dimly lit places where no one asks questions. I ordered a whiskey, then another, trying to drown out the images flashing in my mind. The texts, the video, the bracelet, everything I had seen, everything I had read, the way she looked at him, the way she smiled, the way she laughed. I wondered if I'd ever made her smile like that, if I ever would again. But sitting there, feeling the alcohol burn its way down my throat, I realized there was no point in wondering. This wasn't about what I had or hadn't done. This was about what she had done, about the lies she'd told, about the betrayal. I couldn't let myself get lost in what-ifs. I had to focus. I had to stay sharp. I knew what I had to do. I picked up my phone and called her. She didn't pick up. I tried again and again, until finally she answered, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "Hey, Alex," she said, sounding slightly breathless. "Sorry, I was just about to call you back. I've been caught up with work stuff." I could hear the faint sounds in the background, the muffled noise of a TV, the distant hum of conversation. She was still at the hotel, probably with him, and I felt my blood boil all over again. "Yeah, sure," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Listen, I need to see you. Right now." There was a brief pause, a hesitation on her end. "Now? It's getting late, and I'm still at the office." I bit back a bitter laugh. "Cut the crap, Emily. I know where you are. I know who you're with. So don't bother lying to me." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear her breathing, hear the shock in the sharp intake of air. "Alex, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Mark," I said, my voice low and cold. "I know everything, Emily. I know you've been seeing him. I know you've been fucking him." There it was. The word. I spat it out like it was poison, and I could hear her gasp on the other end of the line. "Alex, please, I can explain." "No," I interrupted. "No more explanations. No more lies. You're going to meet me at home in 30 minutes. If you're not there, I swear to God, I'll come find you. And I don't care who sees it. I'll drag you out of that hotel myself." There was another pause, and then her voice, small, almost defeated. "Okay, I'll be there." I hung up, threw some money on the bar, and left. The drive home was a blur. I barely remember how I got there, only that I was shaking with anger, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard it felt like my bones might snap. When I pulled into the driveway, the house seemed darker than usual, like it knew what was coming, like it sensed the storm that was about to hit. I went inside and waited. Every second felt like a lifetime. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, hear the blood rushing in my ears. I kept looking at the clock, counting down the minutes. 25, 20, 15. I wondered if she'd actually show up, if she had any courage left. And then I heard the car pull into the driveway. The engine cut off, and moments later, the door opened. She stepped inside, her face pale, her eyes wide and fearful. She looked smaller somehow, like a child who'd been caught doing something wrong. "Alex," she started, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't you dare say my name like that. Don't you dare act like you're the victim here." She flinched, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Well, you did," I snapped. "You hurt me. You betrayed me. You lied to my face every day, and for what? For him?" She looked down at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she murmured. "I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to fall in love with him." That word again. Love. I felt something inside me snap. "Love?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You love him? And what about me, Emily? What about the man you promised to love and honor, the man you swore you'd be faithful to? Does that mean nothing to you?" She finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know, Alex. I don't know what happened. I felt so lost. And he made me feel alive again." "Alive?" I shouted. "And what about me, Emily? Did it ever occur to you that you could have talked to me? That we could have tried to fix this instead of you sneaking around like some goddamn teenager?" She sobbed, shaking her head. "I didn't know how, Alex. I didn't know how to tell you I wasn't happy anymore." I felt a bitter laugh escape my lips. "Well, you sure found a way, didn't you?" She looked like she was about to collapse, her shoulders slumping, her face crumpling under the weight of what she'd done. "Please, Alex, please, just give me a chance to explain." I took a step back, feeling the coldness wash over me. "No, Emily. No more explanations. I've heard enough. I have the proof I need. You've made your bed, and now you're going to lie in it." She stared at me, her face a mix of shock and desperation. What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "I mean, you're going to get everything you deserve, and I'm going to make damn sure of it." I stood there, staring at Emily, my mind a cold, calculated machine. Her tears, her sobs, they didn't matter to me anymore. She was shaking, trying to hold herself together, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She wasn't used to seeing me like this. I'd always been the calm one, the understanding one. But that man was gone now, replaced by someone who had nothing left to lose. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, took a shaky breath, and tried again. "Alex, please. I know I've hurt you. I know I've done something terrible, but if you'd just let me—" "Stop," I said, my voice like ice. "I don't want your excuses. I want the truth. I want to know why you did this. Why him? Why not come to me, tell me what was wrong?" She looked at me, biting her lip, hesitating. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out what to say, how to make me understand. I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. "I thought I could handle it, thought it was just a phase. something that would pass. A phase? I cut in, incredulous. Is that what you call fucking another man for months? A phase? Her face crumpled, more tears spilling down her cheeks. No, it wasn't just that. It was more. I felt trapped, Alex. I felt like we were stuck, like we'd stopped trying. And then I met Mark, and he made me feel things I hadn't felt in so long. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. So you thought the answer was to crawl into bed with him? To betray everything we built together? She flinched at my words, but didn't look away. I know it sounds horrible, but it wasn't just about the sex. It was about feeling seen, feeling wanted again. I clenched my jaw, my hands balled into fists at my sides. And you didn't think I could make you feel that way? You didn't think I was worth talking to, worth saving? She took a step closer, reaching out a hand, but I pulled back. Alex, please. I never stopped loving you. I got lost. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But we can fix this. We can try to find our way back. I shook my head slowly, feeling a sick twist of anger in my gut. No, Emily, you don't get to decide that. You don't get to decide how this ends. She looked confused, her brow furrowing. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, my mind racing, formulating the word I needed to say. I went to see Mark, I began, watching her reaction closely. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. You what? She stammered. I went to his house, I continued, my voice steady, and I gave him a choice. Either he makes a little film for me, captures every single moment of your date today, or he deals with something a whole lot worse. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Alex, no, you didn't. Oh, I did, I said, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction. And guess what? He did exactly what I asked. He filmed everything, Emily. Every touch, every kiss, every word. I have it all. I've got the proof I need to destroy you in court, to make sure you walk away with nothing. No house, no money, nothing. Her face went pale, and I saw her shoulders sag under the weight of what I'd just told her. Alex, please, don't do this. You made this choice, I snapped. Not me, but I'm giving you one last chance to make things right. You're going to write a letter. One admitting to everything. You're going to tell the court you were the one at fault, that you were unfaithful, that this whole thing was your doing, and you're going to walk away quietly, without a fight. She blinked at me, disbelief etched on her face. And if I don't? I took a step closer, lowering my voice to a growl. If you don't, then I release the video. I send it to everyone, your friends, your family, your job. I make sure everyone knows exactly what you did and who you did it with. I make sure you're humiliated, shamed, and left with nothing. Do you understand me? Her lips trembled, her eyes filling with fresh tears. How could you do this to me? How could I? I shouted, my anger flaring. How could you do this to us? You didn't think about me. Didn't think about how this would tear everything apart. You only thought about yourself, and now you have to live with the consequences. She took a step back, shaking her head, her face twisted with grief. I'll do it, she whispered. I'll write the letter. Just don't ruin my life, Alex. Please. I nodded, feeling a surge of grim satisfaction. Good. You've got until tomorrow morning. Make sure it's convincing. And don't try anything stupid. I have nothing left to lose. She nodded, her shoulders slumped, defeated. I turned away, unable to look at her any longer. The woman I'd once loved with all my heart, now a stranger, a betrayer. I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, broken and crying, and for the first time in a long time, I felt in control again. But there was no joy in it, no satisfaction, only a hollow emptiness where love had once been. The next morning came slowly, every minute dragging like an eternity. I had barely slept, my mind replaying the events of the previous night, over and over. I kept expecting to wake up and find it had all been some horrible dream, but every time I opened my eyes, the reality was still there, sharp and cutting. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for a text, a call, some sign that Emily was going to follow through. By 8 a.m., I had enough. I walked downstairs to find her sitting at the kitchen table, a piece of paper in front of her face pale and her eyes red from crying. She looked up when she heard me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something. Hope, maybe. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that familiar look of fear. "I did it," she whispered, pushing the paper toward me. "The letter. Just like you asked." I picked it up, scanning the lines quickly. It was all there, every sordid detail. An admission of the affair, an acknowledgement of her guilt, a confession that she had betrayed me, that she was solely at fault. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction as I read it, but there was something else too, something that felt like a knife twisting deeper into a wound I hadn't realized was still bleeding. "Good," I said finally, folding the letter and slipping it into my pocket. "This is going to help in court." She nodded, her hands trembling. "What happens now?" I looked at her for a long moment, feeling a wave of conflicting emotions, anger, resentment, but also a deep sadness, a grief that settled like a stone in my chest. Now? Now, we end this. We get the lawyers involved, file for divorce, and move on. She flinched at the word divorce, but she nodded. "And the video?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. "That depends on you. As long as you cooperate, as long as you don't try to drag this out or make things difficult, the video stays between us. But if you try to fight me, if you try to make this into some kind of war, I'll make sure everyone sees it. Do you understand?" Her eyes filled with tears again, and she nodded quickly. "I understand, Alex. I swear. I won't fight you. I just want this to end." I watched her for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. I needed space, air, something to clear my head. I grabbed my jacket and left the house, not even bothering to tell her where I was going. I just needed to get away from her, from the weight of her betrayal, from the memories that seemed to cling to every corner of the house. I drove aimlessly for a while, my mind a storm of thoughts and emotions. I felt like a man untethered, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, not sure where I was headed or what I was supposed to do next. I pulled into a park and sat there, staring out at the empty fields, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I thought about everything that had happened, how quickly it had all spiraled out of control. I thought about the anger, the hurt, the sense of betrayal that had driven me to confront Mark, to make him do what I did. I wondered if I'd gone too far, if there was any way back from this. And then I thought about Emily. I tried to remember the good times, the moments when we'd been happy, when we'd loved each other with all we had. But those memories felt distant now, faded and hollow, like they belonged to another life, another couple. I sat there for hours, lost in thought, until finally my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a message from Mark. "Come to the hotel. We need to talk." My heart raced. I hadn't expected to hear from him again, not after what I'd made him do. I hesitated, then typed a quick reply. "Why?" His response came almost immediately. "It's about Emily. It's important. Just come." I felt a knot of dread form in my stomach, but I knew I had to go. I needed to know what he had to say, needed to understand what was happening behind my back. I started the car and headed toward the hotel, my mind spinning with possibilities. When I got there, I found him waiting outside, his face tight, his eyes dark. He looked different, nervous, almost desperate. He waved me over and I walked up to him, feeling the tension between us like a live wire. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He glanced around, then leaned in close. "She called me," he whispered, his voice urgent. "Last night, after you left. She's planning something. Something bad." My pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" "She wants to disappear," he said, his eyes wide. "She asked me to help her leave the country, to run away. She's scared, Alex. She thinks you're going to ruin her and she wants out. She's desperate." I felt a surge of anger, mixed with confusion. "And you're telling me this because—" He looked at me, his face serious. "Because I don't want to be involved anymore. I didn't sign up for this. I'm done with her, and I'm done with you. I just wanted you to know before she does something crazy." I stared at him, my mind racing. She wanted to run, to leave everything behind. I hadn't expected this. I thought I had. Her cornered. But now she was planning to slip away, to escape, before I could make her pay. I took a deep breath, feeling the anger rise up inside me again. "Thanks for the heads up," I said coldly. "But if you think this gets you off the hook, you're wrong. You're in this just as deep as she is." He nodded, looking resigned. "I know. Just be careful, okay? She's not the same person you knew. She's changed." I turned and walked away, my mind spinning. Emily wanted to run. She thought she could escape the consequences, could somehow avoid facing the music. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not after everything she'd done. I got back in my car and drove, feeling a new sense of determination, a new plan forming in my mind. If she thought she could run, she was wrong. I was going to stop her, no matter what it took. I drove fast, the engine roaring as I tore through the city streets, my mind racing faster than the car. Emily wanted to disappear, to run and leave everything behind. I couldn't believe it. After everything, she still thought she could get away clean, slip out from under the mess she'd created. I felt my hands tightening on the steering wheel, my knuckles white with tension. She wasn't going anywhere, not until she faced what she'd done. I pulled up to the house, my tires screeching on the pavement, and ran inside. The door slammed against the wall as I entered, my voice echoing through the empty hallway. "Emily!" I shouted. "We need to talk." There was no answer. The house was silent, too silent, like it was holding its breath. I moved quickly from room to room, my eyes scanning for any sign of her. The bedroom was empty, her closet half open, clothes strewn across the bed. A suitcase lay on the floor, still open, a few items of clothing thrown inside. She was packing. She really was planning to run. I felt a surge of panic, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I rushed to her nightstand, yanking open the drawer where she kept her passport, her travel documents. Gone. She was serious. She was actually going to leave. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I snatched it out, almost dropping it in my haste. A text from my friend, the tech guy. "She just booked a flight, leaves in 2 hours. Destination, Rio Rio." She was going to run to Brazil, where she'd have no extradition worries, where she could vanish into the crowd. I felt a wave of anger so intense, it almost made me dizzy. I had to stop her. I had to catch her before she got on that plane. I bolted out of the house and jumped back into the car, my foot slamming down on the gas pedal. The airport was across town, a good 30-minute drive if traffic was light. I checked the time, 90 minutes until the flight. I had to make it. I had to beat her there. As I weaved through traffic, my mind was a whirlpool of thoughts, memories flashing before my eyes. The first time I saw her, our wedding day, the night she told me she loved me. And then, the messages, the lies, the betrayal. I gritted my teeth, feeling a hot rush of rage. I couldn't let her escape. Not like this. I called Mark again. He picked up immediately, his voice tense. "What now?" "She's heading to the airport," I said, cutting straight to the point. "Did she say anything to you about her plan? How she was getting there?" He hesitated. She asked me to drive her, but I said no. I didn't want any more to do with this. She said she'd call a cab. Which company? I pressed, gripping the phone tightly. I think she mentioned yellow cabs, he replied. But I don't know for sure. I hung up without another word and quickly dialed the taxi company, forcing my voice to stay calm as I asked if they had a pickup for an Emily Thompson. After a brief pause, the dispatcher confirmed it. Picked up 10 minutes ago, en route to the airport. Cancel it, I said immediately, my heart racing. There's an emergency. She can't make that flight. The dispatcher hesitated, sensing the urgency in my voice. Sir, I'm not sure I can do that. Just do it, I barked, the desperation clear in my tone. Please, it's a matter of life and death. There was a pause, then a reluctant, all right, sir. I'll send the driver a message. I ended the call and floored the gas, weaving through traffic like a madman, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. I knew this wouldn't stop her for long, but it would buy me a little time, just enough to reach the airport before she figured out what had happened. As I sped toward the terminal, my phone rang. Emily's name flashed on the screen. I felt a jolt of electricity, a mixture of fear and fury coursing through me. I hit the answer button, my voice strained. Emily! Alex! Her voice was shaky, unsure. What are you doing? What am I doing? I shot back, anger flooding my voice. What the hell are you doing, Emily? Running? Leaving everything behind like a coward? She was silent for a moment, then spoke, her voice trembling. I can't stay here. Alex! I can't face what's coming. I'm not strong enough. Not strong enough? I nearly shouted. You think running is strength? You think abandoning everything is some kind of bravery? I just can't do this anymore, she cried. I can't face you, can't face the life we built falling apart. I need to get away. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, my voice lowering to a harsh whisper. Emily, if you get on that plane, there's no coming back. I'll release everything. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. You'll lose everything. She let out a small sob, the sound tearing at something deep inside me. I've already lost everything, Alex. Don't you see that? No, I said firmly. You haven't lost me, not yet. But if you run, you will. She was quiet, her breath shaky. What? What do you want me to do? Come home, I demanded. Come home and face this. Face what you've done. Don't take the coward's way out. There was a long pause, the silence heavy with tension. I don't know if I can, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. You can, I insisted. You have to. Or I swear to God, Emily, I will hunt you down. I will make your life a living hell. You think you're scared now? You have no idea. I could hear her breathing, hear the fear and confusion in every breath. Okay, she whispered finally. I'll come back. Just promise me you won't do anything crazy. I felt a surge of relief, tempered with anger. I'm not the one who's been acting crazy, Emily, but fine, come back, we'll talk. I hung up and turned the car around, my heart still pounding in my chest. I didn't know if she'd actually come back, didn't know if I could trust her. But at least now I had a chance to stop her from slipping away, to confront her once and for all, to make her face the truth. As I drove back toward the house, the sky began to darken, clouds gathering on the horizon like a storm waiting to break. I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The real battle was just beginning. The drive home felt like a countdown, each passing minute heavy with the tension of what was to come. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Emily's car following mine, half dreading that she'd change her mind and head straight for the airport. I didn't know if she'd really turn back, if she'd find the courage or desperation to face me again. When I pulled into the driveway, the house seemed to loom larger, the shadows stretching long across the yard, the air thick with the promise of rain. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, trying to steady my breath. My heart was pounding, my hands trembling. I had to be calm. I had to be in control. This was the end game, and I needed to be ready for anything. Minutes passed, and then I saw her car pull up behind mine. My pulse quickened, my mind racing with what I would say, how I would start. She got out slowly, her face pale, her eyes red and puffy. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, like a child who'd lost her way. I stepped out of the car, walked toward her, feeling the distance between us like a physical barrier. She stopped a few feet away, her shoulders hunched, her hands shaking. "I'm here," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like you asked." "Why?" I shot back, my tone sharp. "Why come back?" She swallowed hard, her gaze dropping to the ground. Because I can't keep running. Because I know I need to face this, face what I did to you. To us." I stared at her, my anger simmering just below the surface. "So you finally grew a conscience? Is that it?" She flinched at my words but nodded. "I know I've hurt you, Alex. I know I've done something terrible. But please, just let me explain." I crossed my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. "Go ahead. Explain. Tell me how you decided that fucking another man was the solution to whatever was broken between us." She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting mine for the first time in what felt like forever. "It wasn't just about sex," she said softly. "It was about feeling alive again. Feeling like I mattered." "Bullshit," I snapped. "If you felt trapped, if you felt unhappy, you could have come to me. You could have talked to me. But instead, you chose him. You chose to betray me. And now you think you can just apologize and make it all go away?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "No, I know it's not that simple. I know I can't just say I'm sorry and make it right. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make you understand. To make you see that I never wanted to hurt you." I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing in the quiet. "Make me understand? You think I'll ever understand why you destroyed everything we had?" She took a step closer, her voice pleading. "I made a mistake, Alex. A terrible, selfish mistake. But I'm still here. I'm still willing to fight for us if you'll let me." I shook my head, feeling the coldness seep deeper into my bones. "Fight for us? You killed us, Emily. You killed everything we were, everything we could have been." Her shoulders slumped, the weight of my words crushing her. I know I did. But I'm begging you, give me a chance to make it right, to fix this." I stared at her, my mind swirling with memories of the life we'd built, the love we'd once shared. And then, I felt the weight of the decision settle on me. I could see two paths stretching out before me, one where I forgave her, tried to rebuild, tried to salvage what was left, and another, darker path, where I made her pay for every ounce of pain she had caused me. I reached into my pocket, feeling the letter she had written, the confession that could destroy her. "Do you really want a chance to make this right?" I asked, my voice low and measured. She nodded quickly, hope flickering in her eyes. "Yes, please, Alex, I'll do anything." I took a step closer, my gaze never leaving hers. "Then prove it. Delete his number, block him on everything, quit your job if you have to, and cut every single tie with him. No more secrets, no more lies, and then, maybe, we'll see if there's anything left to save." Her face crumpled with relief, and she nodded frantically. "I'll do it. I swear. I'll cut him off. I'll do whatever you want." I held her gaze for a moment longer, feeling the conflict inside me, the war between love and hate. "But know this, Emily. If I ever find out that you've lied to me again, If I ever catch you talking to him, even once, it's over. For good. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I promise, Alex, I promise I'll do whatever it takes. I felt a heavy sigh escape me, a mix of exhaustion and resignation. All right, we'll try. But you'd better mean it. You'd better be ready to fight harder than you've ever fought before. She stepped closer, reaching for my hand. I will, Alex. I promise. I'll prove it to you. I hesitated, then took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again, didn't know if the damage could ever truly be repaired. But in that moment, I decided to give her one last chance, one final shot at redemption. As I turned toward the house, Emily by my side, I felt the first drops of rain begin to fall, a slow, steady drizzle that quickly turned into a downpour. The storm had arrived, and I knew the road ahead would be rough, filled with pain and uncertainty. But for now, we were walking it together. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The end.